Princess Zara stepped off the royal transport ship and breathed the familiar air of her homeworld. The crystal spires of the Viridian capital city sparkled under the twin suns, just as she remembered from 5 years ago. But something was different. The streets were filled with celebration banners, and people wore bright colors instead of the worried expressions she had expected. "Your Highness," said Commander Vex, her official escort. "Welcome home. Much has changed since you left for diplomatic training." Zara nodded as they walked through the palace gates. The marble halls echoed with laughter instead of the hushed tones of wartime. Servants rushed past carrying decorative flowers and feast preparations. It looked like the entire planet was preparing for a festival. "Commander, what is all this celebration about?" Zara asked as they entered the main throne room. "The war is over, Princess. We won." Zara stopped walking. The last reports she had received during her training showed the Krath Confederation pushing deeper into Viridian space. Their brutal attacks had left entire star systems in ruins. Victory seemed impossible. "How?" she asked. King Aldrich, her father, rose from his throne with a smile wider than any Zara had seen in years. "My daughter. You returned to us at the perfect time. Come, let me tell you about the miracle that saved our people." Zara approached the throne, still confused. Around the room, military advisors and court officials watched her with expressions of joy and relief. Maps on the walls showed Viridian territory restored to its original borders. Some areas were marked with golden stars. "Father, the last intelligence report said we were losing badly. The Krath were destroying our colonies one by one." "That was before the Phantom arrived," said General Kor, stepping forward. His weathered face showed respect mixed with something that looked like awe. A single human soldier who changed everything. A human. Zara felt her heart skip. In all her years of diplomatic training, she had learned that humans were rare in this part of the galaxy. Most served as independent contractors or traders. "Not just any human," King Aldrich said, gesturing to a large portrait that had been hung on the wall. It showed a figure in tactical armor, face hidden behind a helmet, standing on a battlefield. "The greatest military mind our generation has ever seen. He arrived 18 months ago offering his services as a mercenary. We were desperate, so we accepted." General Kor pulled out a data tablet and began reading. "Battle of Nexus Point. The Phantom used civilian evacuation routes to flank the Krath fleet. Victory in 4 hours. Siege of Titan Base. He convinced the defenders to flood their own trenches, forcing the enemy into kill zones. Victory in 2 days. The liberation of Cygnus Colony. He somehow convinced 3 Krath commanders to surrender by showing them recordings of their own families." "How is that possible?" Zara asked. "No one knows," her father replied. "He works alone, refuses all attempts to study his methods, and disappears after every victory. But he has one strange habit." "What kind of habit?" Commander Vex stepped forward with a small wooden object in his palm. "He leaves these at every battlefield." Zara's breath caught. In the commander's hand sat a tiny carved wooden bird, no bigger than her thumb. The detail was perfect, every feather carefully shaped, the beak pointed upward as if singing. She had seen this exact style before. "May I?" she asked, reaching for the carving. The wood felt warm in her hands. She turned it over and found tiny initials carved into the base, 2 letters so small they were barely visible. Her vision blurred as memories flooded back. "Princess, are you all right?" General Kor asked. Zara steadied herself against a pillar. "Where exactly did you find this?" "The memorial site at Titan Base," Commander Vex replied. "But there are dozens of them. After every battle, survivors report finding these birds left in places of honor, medical stations, orphanages, refugee camps. Always where the most vulnerable people had been protected." "I want to see the memorial sites," Zara said suddenly. King Aldrich frowned. "Daughter, you just returned. Surely you want to rest and hear about your upcoming duties. The memorial sites, father. Now. Something in her tone made everyone step back. General Kor nodded slowly. I can arrange a tour tomorrow, Your Highness. Today. 2 hours later, Zara stood at the Titan Base Memorial. The site had been transformed from a battlefield into a garden of remembrance. Crystalline monuments listed the names of those lost, while living trees provided shade for visitors to reflect. The Phantom strategy saved over 10,000 civilians here, General Kor explained as they walked through the garden. The Krath had surrounded the base for weeks. Our people were starving. He somehow managed to organize a supply run that looked like a retreat, drawing the enemy into the open where our orbital defenses could target them. Zara barely heard him. She was scanning the monuments, looking for more wooden birds. She found one nestled in the roots of a memorial tree, another tucked into a small shrine dedicated to war orphans. Each carving was identical to the ones she remembered from her childhood. Tell me about the peace treaty, she said as they moved to the next site. Most generous terms we could have hoped for, Commander Vex replied. The Phantom insisted on specific clauses, protection for war orphans, refugee resettlement programs, medical aid for both sides. Unusual demands for a mercenary. At the Nexus Point Memorial, Zara found 3 more birds. The site commemorated the space battle that had turned the tide of the entire war. According to the records, the Phantom had somehow predicted exactly where the Krath fleet would emerge from hyperspace and positioned the Viridian forces perfectly. General, do you have any records of the Phantom's background? Zara asked. Classified, Princess. But I can tell you he served with distinction in several other conflicts before coming here. References from the Centauri Defense Force and the Outer Rim Coalition. All positive. By the time they reached the 5th memorial site, Zara was certain. The wooden birds were too perfect, too specific to be coincidence. She had spent countless hours as a child learning to carve exactly these shapes. Her teacher had been patient, kind, and incredibly talented with his hands. I need to speak with my father immediately, she announced. Your Highness, we have 2 more sites to visit, General Kor protested. Later. That evening, in the privacy of her father's study, Zara placed all 7 wooden birds on his desk. Father, I need to know everything about the Phantom. Everything. King Aldrich studied his daughter's face. This is about more than curiosity. I think I know who he is. That is impossible, Zara. His identity has been verified through multiple intelligence sources. His background is solid. What name did he give? Her father hesitated, then activated a secure terminal. Ben Torres. Human, age 28, born on the colony world of New Terra. Military service record shows expertise in unconventional warfare and civilian protection protocols. Zara's heart hammered against her ribs. Father, do you remember where I spent 2 years during the Proxima diplomatic crisis? Of course. The neutral station at Harmony Point. You were 12 and 13. We thought it would be educational for you to observe interspecies cooperation firsthand. Do you remember if I made any friends there? King Aldrich's expression grew thoughtful. You mentioned a human boy several times in your letters home. You seemed quite fond of him. His name was Ben. The king stared at his daughter for a long moment. Zara, that was 15 years ago. The chances that a random human child you befriended would grow up to become the soldier who saved our people are astronomical. He taught me to carve birds exactly like these, Zara said, pointing to the wooden figures. We spent hours in the diplomatic garden, talking about strategy games and wondering what it would be like to help people on a galactic scale. He said he wanted to be a protector. Even if it were the same person, what would you do with this information? Zara picked up one of the birds and turned it over in her hands. The memories were flooding back now, afternoons spent learning human games, evenings discussing philosophy and justice, quiet moments when she had confided her fears about royal responsibility and he had assured her that caring about people was the most important qualification for leadership. "I have to find him," she said. "The Phantom has refused all attempts at formal recognition. He completed his contract and disappeared. Our intelligence services have been unable to track his current location. Then I will find him myself." King Aldrich stood and walked to the window overlooking the capital city. The celebration continued in the streets below, citizens dancing and singing in gratitude for their unexpected salvation. "Daughter, consider carefully. If this soldier truly is your childhood friend, he has chosen anonymity for a reason. The war changed many people. The person you remember may not exist anymore." Zara joined her father at the window. "Maybe not. But I owe it to him to try. And I owe it to our people to thank the person who saved them." "Very well," the king said after a long pause. "I will provide you with access to our military intelligence. But Zara, be prepared for disappointment. War has a way of consuming even the best people." As night fell over the Viridian capital, Princess Zara stood in her chambers holding a wooden bird up to the light. Somewhere out there, the mysterious soldier who had saved her world was trying to disappear into anonymity. But she remembered the boy who had promised to always protect the people he cared about. If Ben Torres had kept that promise on a galactic scale, she was going to find him and make sure he knew he was not forgotten. The celebration continued outside her window, but Zara was already planning her search. Tomorrow, she would begin tracking down the ghost of Victory who had once been her dearest friend. 3 weeks of searching led Princess Zara to the outer rim of Viridian space, where war-damaged colonies struggled to rebuild. The intelligence reports painted a clear trail: medical supplies delivered to remote settlements, construction projects completed overnight, and always the same pattern of help given without payment or recognition. Commander Vex accompanied her on the search mission, though he clearly disagreed with the entire plan. "Your Highness, we have checked 17 settlements in the past 2 weeks. Perhaps it is time to accept that the Phantom does not wish to be found." Zara studied the latest report on her data tablet as their transport ship approached the mining colony of Haven Ridge. "One more location, Commander. The supply manifests show someone has been organizing massive reconstruction efforts here. Medical centers, schools, housing for displaced families. That could be anyone with engineering skills and charitable intentions. Someone who refuses all payment and works only at night," Zara added. "Someone who somehow acquired restricted Viridian military blueprints for defensive systems." The transport landed on a makeshift platform surrounded by construction equipment. Haven Ridge had been one of the hardest-hit colonies during the war. Half the settlement was still in ruins, but the other half showed signs of careful rebuilding. New housing structures stood alongside repaired mining facilities, and Zara could see children playing in what looked like a newly constructed schoolyard. "Princess Zara?" A voice called from the platform. A middle-aged woman approached, wearing work clothes and a surprised expression. "I am Mayor Lin. We were not expecting a royal visit." "Mayor, I am searching for someone who has been helping with reconstruction efforts in the outer colonies. A human man, possibly working under the name Ben Torres." Mayor Lin's face lit up. "Ben. Yes, he has been here for 2 weeks. Amazing worker. He helped us design a new water treatment facility and organized our entire supply distribution system." "But how do you know him?" Zara's heart raced. "Where is he now?" "The Eastern construction site, probably. He works from dawn to midnight every day. Never takes breaks, never accepts payment. We try to give him food and lodging, but he insists on sleeping in his small ship." Commander Vex stepped forward. "Mayor, has this Ben person shown any unusual tactical knowledge or mentioned military experience?" "Oh yes," Mayor Lin nodded. "When the Krath refugees arrived last week seeking shelter, Ben helped us organize defensive positions and evacuation routes. Just in case there were misunderstandings or conflicts. Very smart about protection strategies." Zara exchanged glances with Commander Vex. Krath refugees. Former enemies are here. 3 families. Their world was destroyed in the final battles. Ben insisted we help them. Said that real peace meant protecting everyone, not just the winners. The eastern construction site buzzed with activity. Dozens of workers were installing solar collectors while others assembled prefabricated housing units. At the center of the organized chaos, Zara spotted a figure directing traffic with calm efficiency. He was taller than she remembered and broader across the shoulders. His dark hair was shorter, and visible scars marked his hands and forearms. But the way he moved, the careful attention he paid to safety details, and the gentle way he spoke to the younger workers, these things were exactly the same. Ben, she called across the construction noise. The figure froze. Slowly, he turned toward the sound of her voice. For a moment, their eyes met across 15 years of separation and the weight of a galactic war. Ben Torres looked exactly like the boy she remembered, except for the expression in his eyes. Where once there had been curiosity and hope, now she saw exhaustion and something that might have been pain. I think you have me confused with someone else, he said, turning back to the construction work. Zara walked closer, ignoring Commander Vex's protective instincts. You taught me to carve wooden birds in the diplomatic garden at Harmony Point. You said they represented freedom and the hope that people could rise above their conflicts. Ben's hand stilled on the equipment he was adjusting. Several construction workers had stopped to watch the strange conversation between their mysterious supervisor and the visiting princess. I remember a lot of children from those diplomatic sessions, Ben said without turning around. Many of them had imaginary friends in games. You beat me at strategy games 47 times in a row before I finally learned to think 3 moves ahead, Zara continued. You said the secret was not to focus on winning, but on protecting the pieces that mattered most. This time Ben did turn around. His face had gone pale. Your Highness, I think there has been a misunderstanding. You promised me that when we grew up, you would find a way to help people on a scale that mattered. You said small kindnesses were important, but you wanted to prevent entire wars. People make a lot of promises as children, Ben replied, but his voice had lost its certainty. Zara reached into her pocket and pulled out one of the wooden birds from the memorial sites. You left 43 of these at battlefields across Viridian space. Each one carved in exactly the same style you taught me 15 years ago. Ben stared at the small wooden figure in her hand. Around them, the construction workers had formed a loose circle, sensing they were witnessing something important. Where did you get that? Ben asked quietly. The memorial garden at Titan Base, where the Phantom saved 10,000 civilian lives using tactics that looked suspiciously like the evacuation games we used to play with chess pieces. Ben closed his eyes and took a deep breath. When he opened them again, the careful mask had slipped. Zara. Hello, Ben. The construction site fell completely silent. Commander Vex moved closer, his hand resting on his sidearm, though whether to protect the princess or arrest the legendary soldier was unclear. You should not have come looking for me, Ben said. Why? Because I am not the person you remember. Zara stepped closer, ignoring the tension radiating from both Ben and her security escort. Then tell me who you became. Ben looked around at the watching construction workers, then gestured toward a half-completed building. Can we speak privately? Inside the unfinished structure, Ben sat heavily on a stack of construction materials. He looked older than his 28 years, and Zara could see the weight of command decisions in the set of his shoulders. How many people know? He asked. About your identity? Just me, so far. Keep it that way. Ben, you saved millions of lives. You are a hero to my people. Why are you hiding in construction sites on the outer rim? Because heroes do not exist, Ben said bitterly. There are only people who make terrible choices and hope the math works out in favor of fewer deaths. Zara sat across from him on another stack of materials. Tell me about the war. No. Tell me how you went from a diplomatic station to becoming the greatest military mind of our generation." Ben laughed, but there was no humor in the sound. "You want to know? After I left Harmony Point, I spent 6 years in the Centauri Defense Force. Started as a communications specialist, ended up in strategic planning because I kept suggesting improvements to operational procedures. I was good at seeing patterns and predicting what enemies might do." That sounds like the Ben I remember. "When the Viridian conflict started, I was working as a civilian contractor for the Outer Rim Coalition. The reports coming in were horrible. Entire colonies being destroyed, families separated, children orphaned by military actions that served no strategic purpose." Ben stood and walked to the unfinished window opening, looking out at the construction activity. "I remembered a conversation we had about justice and protection. You said that people with power had a responsibility to use it for those who could not protect themselves. I still believe that. I decided to offer my services to the Viridian military. Not for money or glory, but because I could not stand by and watch senseless destruction continue." "What happened to change you?" Ben was quiet for a long moment. "The first battle I planned, I saved 800 civilians and only lost 12 soldiers. I thought I was making a difference. By the 10th battle, I realized I was becoming very good at predicting how to make people die efficiently. The math was working, fewer total casualties, but I was still ordering actions that ended lives." Zara felt her heart ache for her childhood friend. "You were protecting people. Was I? Or was I just better at war than the people who came before me?" Ben turned back to face her. "Do you know what the turning point was? The battle at Cygnus Colony? General Kor said you convinced Krath commanders to surrender by showing them recordings of their families. I hacked their personal communication systems and found videos of their children playing, their spouses sending love messages. I threatened to broadcast those recordings on public military channels, exposing their families to retaliation from their own government if they did not surrender." Zara stared at him. "That was tactical genius." "That was emotional terrorism," Ben corrected. "I turned their love for their families into a weapon against them. It worked, but it was not heroic. It was manipulation. You saved lives on both sides. I broke the spirits of people who were fighting for their own beliefs about protecting their homes." Ben sat back down, looking exhausted. Every tactical victory came from finding ways to exploit weakness, fear, or desperation. I became very effective at understanding what people valued most and threatening to take it away. But you ended the war. I ended that war. But I created a person who thinks in terms of acceptable losses and strategic advantages. Someone who can calculate the value of individual lives against tactical objectives." Ben looked directly at her. "Is that the friend you remember, Zara?" Zara considered his question seriously. "I remember someone who cared so much about protecting people that he studied every strategy game he could find. Someone who spent hours thinking about how to create situations where everyone could win. That person died somewhere around the 15th battle." "Did he?" "Because the person I see has spent 2 weeks rebuilding homes for war refugees without accepting payment. The person I see convinced a colony to shelter former enemies because real peace means protecting everyone." Ben was quiet. "The person I see leaves wooden birds at memorial sites to honor people who cannot be forgotten," Zara continued. "The person I see negotiated treaty terms that protect orphans and refugees instead of claiming territory or resources." "Maybe," Ben said slowly. "But I cannot forget what I became capable of during the war." "Then do not forget," Zara replied. "Remember it, and use that knowledge to build something better." For the first time since their reunion, Ben almost smiled. "You sound like the diplomatic student I remember. You sound like the protector you always wanted to become." Outside, the construction work had resumed, but Zara could see workers glancing toward the building where she and Ben were talking. Commander Vex waited patiently by the transport, though his posture suggested he was ready for trouble. "What happens now?" Ben asked. That depends on you, Zara said. But you should know that my people want to honor the Phantom for saving our civilization. And I want my friend to know that becoming a protector on a galactic scale was exactly what he promised to do. Ben picked up one of the wooden birds Zara had brought and turned it over in his hands, just as he had taught her to do years ago. I am not ready to be a hero, he said. Good, Zara replied. Heroes have a tendency to make terrible choices. I would rather have a friend who cares enough to keep trying to do better. News of the Phantom's true identity spread through the Viridian Empire faster than Princess Zara had expected. Within days of her return from Haven Ridge, the royal court buzzed with whispers about the mysterious human soldier who had saved their civilization and his childhood connection to their princess. Ben had agreed to return to the capital, but only to help establish proper refugee programs for the war's displaced populations. He refused all offers of military rank, royal titles, or public ceremonies. Instead, he worked quietly with civilian administrators to design housing complexes and medical facilities. The situation is becoming complicated, Your Highness, Commander Vex reported as he entered Zara's private office. Court factions are forming around different opinions about Ben Torres. Zara looked up from the refugee settlement plans she had been reviewing. What kind of factions? Lord Thane leads a group that wants Ben elevated to Supreme Military Advisor. They believe his tactical genius could expand our defensive capabilities across the entire sector. And the opposition? General Corps, surprisingly. He respects Ben's military achievements, but he worries about placing too much power in the hands of an outsider. Especially one with such close personal connections to the royal family. Zara set down her data tablet. What does Ben think about all this political maneuvering? He seems unaware of most of it. He spends his time in the lower city working with construction crews and refugee families. But Your Highness, there is something else. Commander Vex activated a security display showing intelligence reports. We have intercepted communications suggesting that surviving Krath military leaders know about the Phantom's presence on our homeworld. Some appear to be organizing a response. What kind of response? Unknown. But they have good reason to want revenge against the person who destroyed their war effort. That evening, the royal court gathered for the weekly strategic briefing. King Aldrich presided from his throne while military advisors, diplomatic officials, and noble representatives filled the chamber. Ben sat quietly in the back, wearing simple civilian clothes and looking distinctly uncomfortable with the formal proceedings. We must address the question of how to properly honor our savior, declared Lord Thane, rising from his seat. The Phantom's tactical brilliance deserves recognition equal to his achievements. I propose we offer him the position of Supreme Military Advisor with full strategic authority over our defense forces. Murmurs of agreement echoed from several court members. Ben shifted uncomfortably in his chair. General Corps stood to respond. With respect to Lord Thane, placing such enormous military power in the hands of a foreign national, regardless of his past service, sets a dangerous precedent. Our own officers have served with distinction for decades. Our own officers were losing the war until Ben Torres arrived, countered Lady Voss from the diplomatic section. Perhaps we should consider what qualities made him effective instead of debating his citizenship status. The concern is not his effectiveness, General Corps replied. The concern is accountability. Military commanders must answer to established chains of authority. A freelance operative, however skilled, operates outside our traditional structures. Ben finally stood up. May I speak? The chamber fell silent. King Aldrich nodded. I appreciate the generous offers, but I have no interest in military positions within your government, Ben said clearly. I completed a contract to help end a war. That contract is finished. But surely you recognize the value your skills could provide, Lord Thane pressed. Think of the conflicts you could prevent, the lives you could save with proper resources and authority. I think of little else, Ben replied. Which is exactly why I cannot accept formal military command. The tactics that won your war required making choices that no person should have to make regularly. I will not become a professional at such decisions. Princess Zara rose from her seat beside the throne. Perhaps we are approaching this incorrectly. Instead of debating what positions Ben should accept, we should ask what goals we all share. Enlighten us, Princess, said General Kor. We want peace that lasts longer than a single treaty. We want protection for the vulnerable populations that suffered during the war. We want to prevent future conflicts through better understanding between species. Noble goals, agreed Lord Thane. But they require leadership with proven strategic abilities. They require leadership with proven commitment to those goals, Zara corrected. Ben has demonstrated that commitment through his actions, not just his tactical successes. Before anyone could respond, alarms began sounding throughout the palace. Emergency lighting activated as Commander Vex rushed into the chamber. Your Majesty, we have multiple Krath vessels approaching our orbital defenses. They are requesting permission to dock and demanding to speak with the Phantom. The court erupted in concerned voices. General Kor immediately began issuing defensive orders while Lord Thane demanded to know how enemy ships had penetrated their space. Ben walked calmly to the central display console. How many ships and what type? 3 light cruisers, sir. No obvious weapons charging, but they could engage our defense platforms if they chose to. Are they broadcasting any specific messages? Commander Vex checked his communication panel. Yes, sir. They claim to be survivors from the Cygnus colony battle seeking personal justice against the human who used their family connections to force their surrender. Ben closed his eyes briefly, then looked at King Aldrich. Your Majesty, I request permission to speak with these visitors. Absolutely not, General Kor interjected. This could be an assassination attempt or a trap to restart hostilities. It could also be an opportunity to address legitimate grievances, Ben replied. The Cygnus surrender was achieved through methods that violated their personal dignity. They have a right to seek answers. Princess Zara stepped closer to Ben. If you are going to face them, you will not do it alone. Zara, this is my responsibility. You made those tactical decisions to protect my people. That makes it our shared responsibility. King Aldrich looked between his daughter and the human who had saved their civilization. Very well. But this meeting will take place under heavy security with full diplomatic protocols. 2 hours later, in the palace's formal diplomatic hall, 3 Krath commanders stood facing Ben and Princess Zara. The Krath were tall, scaled beings with natural armor and impressive physical presence. Their leader, Commander Vash, carried himself with the bearing of someone who had lost everything but retained his honor. You are the Phantom, Commander Vash stated rather than asked. I am Ben Torres, Ben replied. I commanded the tactical operations that led to your surrender at Cygnus Colony. You violated the sanctity of our personal communications. You threatened our families with exposure and disgrace. Yes, I did. The simple admission seemed to surprise the Krath commanders. They had obviously prepared for denials or justifications. You admit to these dishonorable tactics, asked the second commander, Thak. I used your love for your families as a weapon against your military effectiveness, Ben said clearly. It was strategically sound and ethically questionable. Princess Zara stepped forward. Commander Vash, what outcome are you seeking from this meeting? Justice for the dishonor shown to our families and our military traditions. What would justice look like? The 3 Krath commanders exchanged glances. Personal combat between Commander Vash and the Phantom. Victory restores our honor, defeat accepts the reality of our military situation. No, Zara said immediately. Your Highness, Ben said quietly. They have a legitimate grievance. They have a grievance, but personal combat is not the solution. Commander Vash, your families were not harmed by Ben's actions. They were protected from the consequences of continued military resistance. You do not understand Krath honor codes, Commander Vash replied. Then explain them to me, Zara said. Help me understand how we can address your concerns in a way that strengthens peace rather than threatening it. For the next 3 hours, Princess Zara facilitated a discussion between Ben and the Krath commanders that covered everything from military ethics to family protection to the responsibilities of leadership during wartime. Ben answered every question honestly, explaining his tactical reasoning while acknowledging the emotional cost of his methods. Your tactical approach was effective, Commander Vash finally admitted. But it left our families vulnerable to political retaliation from our own government for our perceived failure. That was not my intention, Ben said. What can be done to address that vulnerability now? Sanctuary, said Commander Thak. Our families require protection from Krath authorities who view our surrender as treason. Princess Zara looked at Ben, then back at the Krath commanders. The Viridian Empire can provide sanctuary for Krath refugees fleeing political persecution. But we would need assurance that this sanctuary would be used to build new lives, not plan renewed conflicts. We have no desire for continued warfare, Commander Vash replied. Our military careers are finished. We seek only safety for our families and the chance to contribute something positive to the galaxy. Ben, Zara turned to her childhood friend. You understand both military strategy and refugee settlement. Would you be willing to help design a program that addresses these needs? Ben considered the question carefully. I would need to work with both Viridian Social Services and Krath cultural advisors to create something that respects everyone's needs. That sounds like a job that requires diplomatic skills as well as tactical knowledge, Zara observed. It sounds like a job that focuses on building rather than destroying, Ben agreed. 6 months later, Princess Zara stood in the observation deck of the new Galactic Refugee Center, watching children from 7 different species play together in carefully designed recreation areas. The center had become a model for interspecies cooperation, providing not just temporary shelter but long-term integration services. Ben approached from the administrative offices, carrying reports and looking far more relaxed than he had during their reunion at Haven Ridge. How are the latest settlement numbers? Zara asked. Better than projected. The Krath Family Integration Program has a 93% success rate, and we have requests from 4 other species to expand the model. Any regrets about declining Lord Thane's military position? Ben smiled, the first completely genuine smile she had seen from him since childhood. None. This work builds things that last. Military victories just create new problems to solve. The court finally stopped debating your official status, I noticed. Hard to argue with results. Though I think some of them still wish I would accept a formal title. Zara watched a group of young Krath teaching Viridian children a traditional strategy game. You know, we never finished our conversation about what you became during the war. I became someone who could make terrible choices when necessary, Ben replied. But I also became someone who understands the real cost of those choices. That understanding makes me better at finding alternatives. And now? Now I am someone who helps people build new lives instead of ending old ones. It feels like the person you believed I could become. Princess Zara smiled as she watched their shared work creating hope from the aftermath of conflict. It feels like the person you always were, just with better tools and more experience. Outside the observation windows, former enemies worked together to create something none of them could have built alone. It was not the dramatic victory of military conquest, but the deeper triumph of turning conflict into cooperation. Ben Torres had indeed become a protector on a galactic scale, exactly as he had promised a young princess 15 years ago in a diplomatic garden.